Imagine standing at ancient shrines amidst flickering torchlight, inhaling the scent of incense and hearing echoes from a time long past. I will tell you about how in the ancient world people tried to glimpse the future. All of this has been passed down to me by old walls, by the whispers of the wind, by the spirits of those times, and perhaps, in a sense, I was there and I heard them myself. These stories are not scientific treatises, but rather a journey into a world of mysteries and premonitions, where fate and prophecies were intertwined as one. We are about to dive into this world together. Join me. Prophets perhaps had it easier back then. They lived among people who perceived the future as something just as immutable as the past. Our ancestors believed that the fate of every person was already predetermined, and by choosing path, we merely went to meet this destiny. Yet they believed that this choice was ours, and even if the road was inevitable, each step along it was made by us. It was a time when prophets did not speculate on dozens of possible outcomes as we modern skeptics do, but they saw one singular future, just one inevitable chain of events. Imagine an enormous diagram through which a tiny point moves. Our present moment. Everything that could happen was already known to the gods and spirits. All one had to do was ask, and they could tell a person about it. Oracles and priestesses. Oracles were centers of wisdom. People turned to them for all sorts of reasons. To learn about geopolitics and battles, or even just to find a missing blanket. However, their magic wasn't entirely mystical. Many priestesses, for instance, lived in ordinary cities, knew rumors, and were simply wise women capable of manipulating answers and twisting questions. To be the voice of a divine entity required not only a connection with the heavens, but also a clear mind. Oracles knew many secrets long before people came to them with questions. Particularly famous was the priestess of Apollo in Delphi, an educated Greek woman who spoke in riddles. Yet, in those verses, one could always discern the key to the future. Imagine a woman standing in a temple with fragrances swirling around and mysterious melodies sounding. In her eyes was ancient wisdom, and her words were like keys that could either unlock truth or lead one into a trap. Priestesses had to maintain not only their connection with the divine, but also physical and spiritual purity. Rituals of purification were an important part of their lives. they spent much time in seclusion preparing to receive prophecies. This process included fasting, meditation, and rituals that help purify the mind and body from worldly distractions and draw closer to divine truth. For priestesses and seers, spiritual practice was an inseparable part of their existence. They could spend days, sometimes weeks, in prayers and meditations until they reached a state in which they could hear the voices of the gods. In this state, they became intermediaries between the world of people and the world of the heavens. It was important not only to hear the gods, but also to understand how to convey their message to people in a way they could accept and comprehend. But it wasn't just humans like priestesses and prophets who could hear the voices of gods. In groves, among oaks, the truth whispered as if Zeus himself spoke to the branches. Someone had to discern what lay behind that rustling, what the mighty God whispered to convey. In some cases, the trees themselves became symbols bearing omens. Ancient people believed that forests and groves were the homes of gods, and every rustling of leaves could carry hidden wisdom. This added even more mystique to their world, where every natural phenomenon could be a sign from above. Omens and sacrifices. Oracles were not the only way to learn the future. Ancient people saw omens and signs around them. Every unnatural sound, every flash of a comet in the sky, or a sudden clap of thunder could speak the future. Remember that mysterious comet piercing the sky, foretelling bad events. The human factor, of course, always complicated the interpretation of these signs. People tried to influence what was destined to happen. Sometimes the entrails of sacrificial animals were used for divination. Imagine a priest peering into the liver of a sacrificial sheep, trying to understand what twist of fate awaited the kingdom. These entrails were like a map and needed to be properly read, and every fold was significant. But if the liver did not please the priest, another sacrifice was brought, and so on until the gods showed favor. Sacrifices were not just a ritual, but a way of interacting with the divine. People believed that this way they could appease the gods, receive their blessing, or even change their fate. Every step of this process was important, from selecting the animal to the ritual incantations that accompanied the sacrifice. It was believed that only a pure and innocent being could deliver the desired message from the gods. priests carefully selected animals for sacrifices. For instance, sheep and bulls had to be without a single physical blemish, symbolizing the purity of the sacrifice. After the ritual, priests could watch the smoke from the sacrificial fire for a long time, trying to understand whether the gods accepted their offering. Every swirl of smoke, every crackle of the fire was an important sign that could speak of divine favor or wrath. Birds. Birds were no less important than priests. Their flight, height, and direction carried answers to crucial questions. Roman generals took sacred roosters with them on campaigns to determine whether the gods favored them, whether the rooster pecked at the grain or not, could determine the entire campaign, the fate of many people. Birds circling high in the sky or suddenly taking off from the ground were messengers, capable of conveying the voice of the heavens. By carefully observing their behavior, augurs could get answers to complex questions, determine when the best moment for action was, and what should be avoided. Birds were intermediaries between the world of the gods and humans. Their behavior could be an omen, especially if they were birds associated with particular gods. Ravens, for instance, were associated with Apollo and were considered his messengers. Eagles, in turn, were symbols of Jupiter, and their flight could be a decisive factor in making important decisions. In Rome, there was an entire castle of augurs dedicated to interpreting the flights of birds. They were respected people, and their word could influence politics and military campaigns. Dreams. Dreams were also an important source of prophecies. Sometimes a deceased relative would come to a sleeper to warn of impending misfortunes, or mysterious images in a dream required interpretation, like cryptic signs from a world that did not exist. Only the most enlightened could separate mere fantasy from true prophecy, as Plato said. The less a person was involved in vanity, the closer they were to the truth. Dreams could contain symbols that needed to be explained. A snake could signify renewal or danger, while a bird could symbolize freedom or the soul of the deceased. Artemidorus of Thales is a famous interpreter of dreams. Devoted his entire life to studying these cryptic messages. He believed that each dream required that individual approach, and only someone who knew the dreamer's soul could properly understand its meaning. Dream interpretation was a kind of art that required not only knowledge, but also deep intuition. Dreams were often filled with allegorical images, each of which could have multiple meanings. For example, water in a dream could symbolize both purification and danger, depending on its state. Dirty water could foretell illness or troubles, while a clear water symbolized spiritual purification and renewal. Dreams were a way of communicating with the divine, and their correct interpretation could help avoid misfortune or prepare for trials. In a world where everything was predetermined, people did not see themselves as powerless. They believed that courage and resilience in the face of fate define their true dignity. Not wealth or power, but how one meets their fate. The ancients understood that the world was unpredictable and that not everything could be changed. But one's attitude could. Submission to fate was an active position, striving to live life with dignity and helping others. They believed that even in harsh times, a person could choose how to meet challenges, with despair or with dignity. The wisdom of the ancients lay in accepting the inevitable and controlling their reactions. They knew that every action influenced the further chain of events. Mutual assistance and community support were important. Together, people could overcome any trials and face fate with pride. So, stars, when we look back at ancient prophecies, we see not just predictions but a reflection on how people perceive their lives, their fate, and that which is beyond our understanding. Perhaps we should learn from them to be wise, to not fear what is predestined, and to live in such a way that we are valued not for success but for the strength of our spirit. Thank you for being with me on this journey. I hope the spirits of the ancient oracles whispered something important to you. Until the next mysterious stories, may this wisdom of the ancient help you in life. Perhaps next time, when the wind whispers something in your ear, or you see a strange dream, you will wonder, is someone from the ancient spirit speaking to me? And remember, there is strength within each of us, the strength to defy fate, to find one's path even in the darkest times. The ancients knew what matters is not what is predetermined, but how we deal with it. May your steps be bold and your spirit unwavering, just like those who lived long before us. Stay magical. Bye.